Apagado melhor. Não, apagado.
Tá pronta? Esperar uns 5 minutos. Você que tá em fevereiro, esperar uns 5 minutos para começar.
Eu já comecei porque tem um DJ. Mas aí. Esse segue.
Eu vou já pegar. Tô aqui.
Calma aí. Tá.
Deixa no mudo.
Não, esse é o microfone, não é o áudio. É o microfone, não é o áudio. Não tem que deixar o microfone no meio. Tá. Calma aí. Ah, é.
Aqui, ó. Aqui, ó. Ali, ó.
Ah, é verdade.
Bem-vindos. Welcome. Eu vou falar, sei lá, português, inglês, mas a palestra vai ser em inglês, mas não estou todo divertido disso, não? Mas eu só quero dar as boas-vindas a você, aqui o espaço, a casa Amani. Amani, o significado é paz, em Swahili, que é a língua do Quênia. E o que acontece nesta casa é realmente treinar pessoas que querem dedicar sua vida a ter uma vida com impacto e com propósito. Então, o que faz é justamente ajudar essas pessoas a virar o setor social, mas de jeito produtivo, de jeito aprofundado, com alinhamento. A gente faz isso de muitos jeitos, com cursos compridos de 10 meses, de 3 dias, de 4 dias. Quem quiser saber mais da gente, eu pido que você deixe um e-mail com a gente, se você não está registrado no evento, para comunicar mais. Mas tudo que seja fazer treinamento no setor social, para que as pessoas possam, de verdade, trabalhar com o setor social, com energia, com sentido, com impacto, podem ligar para a gente. E dentro das coisas que a gente faz, é justamente compartilhar nossa rede de contatos. Hoje temos a sorte gigantesca, muito gigante, perdão por vir portunhol, gigante, gigantesca, de ter hoje a Erin, que agora eu vou mudar para inglês, eu também posso entender que estou falando dela, but I'm going to switch to English, they can also follow me. So we are very lucky to have today in this house, in the Amani house, Erin, and it's an honor for many different reasons. It's an honor because we've been helping Amani since the very beginning. So she was one of those cheerleaders, like, do it, yes, you can do it, go for it. And you always need someone that really supports you at the beginning because it's really hard. So thank you for that, Erin. It's been also very invaluable to have Erin, and it's an honor to have her here because she also helped us to shape what Amani is today. So how to really bring a new education to train people that want to work in the social sector. So she helped us with all her experience, and she will share more about that. She helped us to do that. So thanks, Erin. And it's an honor because she has done a lot in her life. You will get to know her a bit more now. And her last job and current job is Ashoka U, is one of the founders. And you will get to know more about Ashoka U. But I was able to see firsthand when I was living in the US and in Latin America also, how they grew so much in the last few years. So it's also very nice to have that, and hopefully we will get a chance to understand how you did it and what we have not to do that. And they're actually really changing the system in the US and then hopefully globally. So hopefully we will also be able to learn more about that. So because of all that reasons, I want to thank Erin for coming here and all of you for being here. This house is an open house. You're always welcome to come anytime you want. Please just send us an email so we know that we're somewhat open for you here. But it's an open house. If you want to use the space also, let us know. If you want contact, if you want to know more about Amani and innovation, please be in touch with us. Stuff for you. Amani team. Rash with the Amani team also. And myself, Elaina or Ila. So with that said, Erin, thank you very much. Have the stage.
Good evening, boa noite. And I apologize for not speaking in Portuguese tonight. But if I'm talking too fast or if you have any questions, I love to be interrupted and to play and to chat. So Ila has told me that I'm supposed to talk for up to an hour, and I have no problem talking a lot. So I will talk a lot, but feel free to leave anytime. Go to, I think there's the kitchen and coffee. I've fallen in love with Brazilian coffee. I think this is my 5th cup today. I get really excited. But in any case, this to say, I'm in the spirit of Amani, very comfortable, very just here to connect with you all. So please engage with me in that way. So if any questions, just stop me. So I wanted to start first with a question that I think about a lot in my day-to-day work. And this is about the most powerful learning experience that you've had in your life. I'm even just going to pause for a minute. So I actually think of a very specific example So one moment where you feel like it was a very hard lesson learned, that you grew as a person, that it was just this really powerful learning memory for you. And you're going to share it with someone, so you actually have to have something. So I'll give you 30 seconds to think of something. All right. So if you can turn to someone next to you and just quickly, 30 seconds each, just share this moment. What was this learning experience? The first thing that popped in your head. Yeah, please go.
When you're talking.
Now, can you raise your hand if you were in a classroom in the example that you shared? Definitely the minority, though. Maybe if you could. So, in honor of being in Brazil, I wanted to share, this is me here on the room. This was actually in Rio de Janeiro 10 years ago. Wow. This was the last time I was in Brazil, the first time I came here. And I had a dear friend who I'd never been rock climbing before and said, how about we go rock climbing? I said, that sounds fun. But I remember this physical experience of I'm actually pretty scared of heights. And so going up and having this experience, and then I remember going into my day, and I struggle with self-confidence sometimes, especially, so thanks all of you for such a warm welcome. And I've dealt with that over time, but also definitely heights. And so I remember after having this experience, I thought, I can approach my day. I was climbing a mountain this morning, no big deal. And so this is just to say that when I think about the most powerful learning experience I've had, and I'm a very experiential person, and when you think about colleges and universities that are helping to educate the people who are going to be going out, all of us who are going to be leading society, putting forward the new ideas, we're not really getting these powerful learning experiences in the classroom or necessarily in that university environment, because the design of colleges and universities has been about the same for several hundred years. And I'll get into that a little bit about why it's that way. But first, what I thought I would do is, in the last few years, this challenge has been recognized. I think there's a tension in higher education right now where we recognize that the model isn't really fitting with our needs. Because the world is changing, And so there's a few historical structures and some particular changes happening right now in the world that is making the structure of higher education seem even a little bit more old school and not really aligned with our needs. So one of those is that all of us in the room are around the millennial generation. And the generation before us was in a job at least for 4 years, sometimes even for an entire lifetime in a career trajectory. And for this generation that's coming into the workforce right now, it's about half that. So we're spending about 2 years in a job. And we have to be able to work across industries in uncertainty, not knowing what our next job is. And then we also have to work across borders. I think everyone I've met at Amani doesn't have one nationality. I think everyone is from all different countries. I think one of the things that really drew me to Amani as a model is that one of the goals is to be completely to completely cut out our boundaries, to be boundaryless in our global world. So I wanted to share, actually if we go back to this one, I have a couple of my other favorite disruptors in higher ed that I'm gonna just toss out to start with because of this challenge. We are seeing disruptors come in to the higher education space. So this one, if you haven't heard of them, the Minerva Project. It's this pretty incredible model based out of San Francisco. But what's unique about it is that the students going to Minerva are going to study in 7 different world cities throughout their 4 years of university. Yeah, very exciting. I want to go back to college. Yes. And not only that, but when I went to go visit this model, I just went there a few months ago, and I met all the students. So what they wanted to do was, they said, you know what? Universities are so expensive. We know how to learn well, but we're not doing this in higher ed. So we're going to create an entirely new model. And they said, but you know what? No dorm rooms, no athletic facilities, no buildings. Let's just break it down to the essence. So all the students live together, so they learn together. But everything is personalized. So all of their courses they do take online with a personalized portfolio. But all of the creatively, effectively, and everything is based on that. So very cool disruptor in higher ed, very global, competency based. So this is okay. We're seeing some bright spots. And another, I think all of us have probably seen the trends in online education. Once again, some favorites being in the higher ed sphere of disruptors in the space. I love Coursera. They're trying to work with the system. They're working with traditional colleges and universities to get some courses online for free. And when you talk to the founders, Andrew Erin, who's a mentor of mine, he said, you know what, we have to scale our solutions to the size of the problem. And he said, today, there's a global marketplace of more people going to college than ever before. And not only are the universities not well equipped for the global marketplace, but they don't actually have physically enough seats for the number of people who want a college education. So I love what Coursera is doing as well. It's really fun. And another kind of global trend that higher education is not dealing with right now very well is that we're going to be working longer and living longer. Good news for us. I think there's just someone who said to be 110, 120, you're hearing these stats. And these are more American-centric, but as it says, the demographic shift is also global, that by 2030, more Americans will be over 65 than under 15 years old. For the first time in history, we're going to have an extra 20 or 30 bonus years of life. I can't wait to,
wow.
Like, what are we going to do with our bonus years? I have so many ideas. If you can go ahead. And so I haven't seen any great things that happened yet, but there was a study at Stanford, another thing that I highly recommend you look up, called Stanford 2025. And it was the design school, the Stanford Design School said, what should Stanford look like in the year 2025? Stanford, they're ahead of the curve. They know that Stanford's not even meeting the needs. And they said, avocados don't ripen in 8 days, so why is everyone ready for college after 18 years? And came up with a concept of the open loop university. Instead of having an alumni, said how can Stanford be a place for lifelong learning? And specifically stretch out the college education, not to 4 years, but something that happens throughout a lifetime. So I think great idea, hasn't happened yet. They did the study, now it's on the shelf, but I'm gonna advocate for it because I think it's a good idea. But even though I love all of these innovators, these disruptors I just introduced, I'm working in higher education because I don't think they've got it all right. Minerva only has about 80 students in their incoming class. Really exciting new model. You know, Coursera is going big, but you know, basic calculus, chemistry, you know, basic foundational work that you need for college education. And the same thing, the Stanford 2025 is just a study. It's not actually happening yet. But I think another global trend is that we do have more urgent problems than we've ever had before. I think everyone's in this room because we all have had a moment where we see there's things happening in the world that we want to do something about. And universities are not systematically supporting young social entrepreneurs. That I think at universities you have to come to other places like Imani or find a group of friends that are supporting you or other fellowship programs. But in the core heart of the university, it's very rare to find this type of support to actually launch you in a life of impact. So there's kind of these trends, and I'm interested in tackling all of them. But there's silos at universities, and I think today we have to be interdisciplinary thinkers. Kind of online and networking skills. I think we have to have much more advanced skill sets given the rate that the world is changing to be able to compete and be competitive and to just keep up. I mean, we think about the mapping of the human genome, we think about robotics, we think about all of these things that all the jobs that we're not going to have and the skills we need in the future, and those entrepreneurial mindsets aren't necessarily there. And then these lifelong learning opportunities, and finally the ethical mindset of knowing about what's happening in the world and having the skill set to do something about it. But universities are getting some pressure, right? The costs are rising in higher ed. I know I was just recently in Santiago, Chile, and there was all kinds of student protests happening because of the cost of higher ed. And I'm not sure exactly the situation here in Brazil, but it's in the US in particular, increasing competition. Universities are saying, how do we recruit the best students? And the best students see that these are trends that are happening that universities aren't meeting. So there's an opportunity. I think the best social entrepreneurs, we see really deep entrenched problems, and especially when those problems are coming to a boiling point, that they're so obvious that there's a problem, it's a huge entrepreneurial opportunity. And specifically, when I dig down to the root cause of this problem over the years, universities are just standing their ground. So they're not really going onto the online education game. They're not really going into personalized, customized learning. They're not figuring out how to get into the social entrepreneurship game. Because of these entrenched historical traditions, professors have incentives to stay in their disciplinary silos to get tenure for that. You know, there's academic incentives to have all of the tuition, to have the beautiful lawns, to have the gated doors. And so it's very hard to change. The further I dig, this is where it's at. So, however, we use this opportunity, this is the final insight that I've come to that will kind of launch the work I do today, that because of the rising pressure for the change in higher education, all of a sudden universities are realizing that they have to be social enterprises themselves. They actually have to reinvent themselves to stay relevant, to stay competitive. And the work that I do with Ashoka U, that I'll go more in depth to share, is to pick on the root cause of the problem, to say, okay, your historical tradition says the university has to be the way it is, but most universities, at least in the US, have a mission statement. And almost every mission statement of any university, now the hundreds of universities I've worked with, have a statement to contribute to society, is the purpose of the institution. So when we can make a case about how the university can reinvent itself, while sticking to the core mission of the university, then it makes them feel safe enough to consider taking the first step towards change. And then they have the fear of the competition and everything that's happening in terms of the relevance of the university to actually collaborate to do something different. So this is what I'll share more about how we've gone about to do that. But this insight came much later. It takes many, many, many years to find what the root cause of a problem is that you're working on. So I thought I'd share just a little bit of my journey about where I got to where I am today, and then share more about what we can show you. Great, so this is showing my age, not too old, but about 10 years ago, in 2004, I was a student at Stanford University. And at the time, social entrepreneurship had just started as a theme at the business school. But I was an undergraduate student, and there were so many silos, we couldn't even go into a class at the business school. So I would sneak into the classes. And because there was this thing called social entrepreneurship that really appealed to me. So I got together with some friends. I know we have some youth activists in here. So we were the kind of young people that thought, you know, the university should really be teaching this for undergrads, not just for business school students. And so I started a club with a dear friend of mine who I still work with, the Stanford Future Social Innovators Network. And this is when we realized how hard it was to change a university. This was our proposal for a minor in social innovation. We knocked on every single door. We talked to the president of the university. We talked to the professors at the university. We did all of our homework to say, here are all the classes in anthropology and art and history of the engineering school that are relevant in a cross-disciplinary fashion for students looking to get this experience to then apply it to the world. And we're doing all this stuff in an extracurricular fashion, no academic credit. So how could we get academic credit for all of this work where we're learning so much by applying our knowledge in the community? So the minor passed provisionally, but I think it's failed and come back like 3 or 4 times in the meantime because of lack of funding, lack of interest, different people at Stanford coming up with their own ideas. Everyone's very entrepreneurial there. So it was a bit of a struggle trying to figure out how to get this passed. But also while I was at Stanford, the reason that first picture I showed you was in Brazil, I met a professor who was a social entrepreneur. And in honor of being in Brazil, I wanted to share this experience. So this professor of mine was working with the Bolsa Familia program that you might be familiar with here in Brazil. And I took a class with her, so she was the one professor who actually helped us walk through a whole social business plan model. And
what is her name?
Melanie Edwards.
Edwards.
Okay. So the founder of Mobile Metrics, she was a Reuters Digital Vision Fellow and now an Equity Green Fellow. And her insight was that the government wasn't actually accurately getting data from communities in Brazil to know if families were eligible for the Bolsa Familia program. And so she said, why don't we work with youth who live in the favelas? They actually know the community members. They'll probably get more accurate data because they're trusted. And on top of that, this was 2004, so we didn't have the cell phone technology yet. So she said, let's use Palm Pilots, and we had a partnership with Palm, and get the data digitally so it'd be much more secure and easy to send the data to the government rather than those handheld surveys at the time. And I said, this is amazing. I will volunteer for you, whatever you want. So this was part of my gaining experience in college. And I wrote a proposal that was accessible. And what was fascinating was that the model didn't work. And what a great experience as a student to come and see at the time. But even though we got the data to the government, the Brazilian government wasn't really using the data to get the services to the communities. And so I relayed this information, back. Now I'm still on the board of Mobile Metrics as well. And now they changed it. They said, okay, how can this be a way for the community to own the data themselves and to advocate for their own needs? So now we do partnerships with actually Johnson & Johnson with a project when there was the dengue outbreak in Rio. We said, all right, let's do a survey and see why did this dengue outbreak happen? and what could families do differently in the community to help solve this problem. So that was one experience as a young learner and apprentice in social entrepreneurship that I was getting through kind of seeking out these experiences in university. Oh wait, is that? Yeah. The next one. Oh, okay, cool. Go back, I guess. And so I had a slide before this, but then my next experience after Brazil, I met an Ashoka Fellow, social entrepreneur who was working in Colombia, in Bogota, Colombia. And I ended up working with her for about 3 years, scaling her educational model that she was doing in rural communities. And what's interesting about that is that I realized it was so hard. She had been working on her model for 20 years. The government had already adopted her educational model as a national policy. And I was working with her to scale her model throughout Latin America because the World Bank had already picked it up as a model. And scaling an organization as a 21-year-old is probably not the best role for someone. And so I learned really fast what I wish I would have learned in college that I hadn't, which brings me actually here. So I was working in Colombia. I worked with this organization for 3 years. We did a lot of fundraising. This is also one way I realized, what are different skill sets that I can bring to the table. And one is that I do love writing proposals. So that was a comfortable role for me working with Escuela Nueva in Colombia. But I got married, as one does, these interrupts things, and I went to Japan briefly for about a week. And I was in Japan, and then my friend Marina, who had been my Stanford co-leader, called me, and this is, I think, a good reason to stay in touch with anyone you see who you work extremely well with, to hang on to them, because you never know when they can come back into your life as a co-founder, co-partner. And so Marina called me and said, oh my gosh, I just realized you don't have a job. And I was like, I was just a week of vacation. And she said, so I'm at Ashoka, and for those of you who are not familiar with Ashoka, it's a global organization based in Washington, D.C., but it's been around for 30 years, and there's offices in about 40 countries, including here in Brazil. And it's an organization known for coining the term social entrepreneur. And we have a global network of social entrepreneurs around the world. And she was working there, and she said, we have this amazing platform of all of these social entrepreneurs, great case studies. All of these universities are coming to Ashoka to say, can you send us speakers? Can we come and intern with you, volunteer with you? And she was like, but as we know, the social entrepreneurship education at universities still stinks. Like we haven't made any progress. We're just partnering with universities, but we haven't been changing anything. And she said, do you want to come to Washington and help me launch this? And within Ashoka, she said, I think this is the perfect platform. We have space here to be entrepreneurs in the organization, launch something new. This was a Thursday, and I said, well, when do you need me? And she said, tomorrow would be great, but Monday would be okay too. We have a meeting with Bill Drayton, the founder and CEO, on Monday. It's okay. So I got a flight on Sunday. Sometimes you just be ready to get up and go. Mm-hmm. And so I flew directly from Japan all the way to Washington. I changed into a suit at the airport. I'm meeting the CEO. I don't really know what to wear. And we met with Bill. And Ashoka is an interesting place. And I think and many times in my path, I've not been happy with this, but it's been very hard. This was in 2008. So for those of us who remember, the economic crisis hit very hard, especially for us in the US right around this time. Ashoka had just lost our biggest grants that were unrestricted funding to support staff. And so Bill said, I love your ideas, which is taking the Ashoka ideas and platform and helping to change universities to not only embrace social entrepreneurship, but also to be social enterprises themselves. This is great. But you'll have to fund your own salaries, fund your program budget, and also pay an overhead to the organization. Okay, all right. Good, but you're saying that we're on, right? You're saying that we've been approved. And he was like, yes. So we went off, and the next week, I was like, okay, we just need a little bit of money. We don't need a lot of money. And so I wrote a 2-page concept note But what is a changemaker campus? We dreamed about what is the Ashoka's vision world where everyone can be a changemaker. And so we didn't really know what a changemaker campus was, but we knew we wanted to challenge universities to become one, and we knew they weren't one. From not changemaker campus to changemaker campus was basically the concept note. And you can be the first ones. And so we sent this round, and 4 universities signed up for $15,000 apiece. And so that was right, I would say 2 weeks before the really hard economic crisis hit, and most universities went on a freeze of spending. So it was very lucky timing, but that was just enough startup capital to get us going. And I'll share more how our business model has evolved since that, but I would say that has been part of our DNA as now, for the past 8 years that I've been working on this. We started knowing that we had to support ourselves and be a sustainable organization within an organization, but that also we found out that universities, when they actually had some financial transaction involved, they took the process much more seriously. And so this became an important part of our model. And I'll share more about that. And before I go too deep down into the Ashoka U path, the best part about being at Ashoka is that it is this entrepreneurial incubator. So it is this incredible organization full of entrepreneurial people, including Ela and her co-founder Roshan Amani. And so all of us, as we're building our work at Ashoka, are meeting with friends who have great and amazing ideas. And as Ela mentioned, I was walking around Washington, D.C. by the Jefferson Monument with Roshan. He said, Erin, I have this idea. You know, I know that you're working on this university stuff and they're not moving fast enough. And I really want to start a school that's a better alternative for educating social innovators and entrepreneurs. I said, well, great, start tomorrow. We need more models. These universities need examples. And so I just wanted to share my not only huge admiration for all of you Amani Fellows, but also for my work with Amani, because I've basically devoted the last now decade of my life making a bet that we're the generation that's going to change the whole culture of society in terms of our expectations of who we are as change makers and what we can contribute. And so for me, I've strategically placed myself within Ashoka U and the work I'm driving, but also in addition to Amani, I'm on the board of a university, an organization called the Watson University as well. And they're both doing alternative university models for social innovation in higher education. I actually believe it's very much the leading edge, and that's really important. So whatever social venture you're working on,
It's called
Watson University.
Where is it?
In Boulder, Colorado, and now in the Philippines and also in Philadelphia. And so I think, yeah, whatever venture that you're working on, just making the point that you can get so focused right in front of you with all of the work, especially when you're raising your salary, raising your budget, doing all this work, that to really stay connected to a network that's also driving forward similar goals. And so I'm really honored to be part of Amani because of that. And so, but back to Ashoka U, we'll go to the next slide. So Ashoka U is our umbrella brand. It connects us with Ashoka, and it gave us some flexibility because especially when we were starting, we didn't know what products we were going to create. We didn't know what would be our killer app for changing the higher education system. But our first bet and our kind of cornerstone program is Changemaker Campus. And this we've evolved as a rigorous designation or even an accreditation process. And this took many years to figure out, but in charging universities, universities sometimes can give money easily and sometimes they can't. It depends who you ask. And so it was really important for us to come up with a formula they were familiar with. And so we found that an accreditation process was something that was an analog for universities. They understood what it was. They thought, okay, Ashoka is the premier organization in social entrepreneurship, makes sense to align with them. And then we said, great, we'll give you a gold star at the end if you can make it through the process, and universities love gold stars. A plus is what they're looking for. And so that took many years actually to come up with what are the right incentive models to make it move the fast, because we thought this was going to change in like a year, and it turns out that universities take a very long time to change. So what are the incentives that you can put out there to help a system move faster? And so what is involved? What are we actually looking for at these universities? This is the how-to. I'll get into what we actually see later. But it's one thing to say, you should start a social entrepreneurship program, but it's not actually that easy. And this is a lesson I learned from a student when I was trying to launch the social entrepreneurship major. Because we didn't have the senior level administrators, an entrepreneurial leader, and a team across disciplines, it just was a silo at Stanford. It was just this one little pocket that we were working with. And so it didn't become an embedded culture at the university. And so our first principle is that we actually have to have people to ignite change. We might spend the first 6 months working with the university, just finding the right leader within the university. If any of you have hired for your organizations, you know that the difference between being an excellent organization and a good organization is the people you work with. And the same thing, working at the university, if we are working with a dud, nothing happens. But if we find someone who has that drive inside, if someone who is very well respected, someone who has a vision, they know the university could be doing better. And also, they're not looking for a program. It took us many years to say, we're not coming with a boot camp. We don't have our own curriculum. We have nothing. We're looking for innovators who have the solution. So we actually had to find innovators who wanted to rise to that challenge. But once we get those innovators, then it's their job to build a team. And so that team has to be from across disciplines, so that it wasn't just stuck in the business school or a center, and also students from different graduation dates. Because students, we realized at first we were very student heavy, but students graduate before the whole institutional change process was done. So it's important to have the faculty and administrators involved, but also students, because frankly, students have the best ideas. They actually know what they want their education to be and have a really powerful voice on campus. And maybe we'll go to the next slide and I can share a little bit more about the process. So once we find, so that's like the secret sauce. If you're really looking to work within a system, it's really best not to do the work from outside the system, but to find someone within that system who is really willing to change it. So that was a huge lesson. But then we had to provide some value. We're still charging for the process. So we can't just find people and tell them to do all the work. Although, it has its benefits. So here's the process that we created, and over the years, every year, universities, having a client is a great thing because they're not afraid to give you feedback. If they're paying for it, they'll tell you when your job is, when you're doing a terrible job. And they'll tell you when you have a typo in your document, especially the professors who love the typos. And, we had to really go through a lot of, so my poor sensitive self-confidence had to get much stronger because I got a lot of really tough feedback over the years. So we eventually created the first step. And one thing we realized is that because it does take so long, it couldn't be just an open-ended process. Because if we didn't put boundaries around it, then we weren't pushing them to move further. It's almost like a personal trainer. I think about this sometimes. When you go to the gym, you're like, I know I need to change. I'm going to go and hire a personal trainer to get fit. And so we have universities coming to us for that. They say, we know we need to change. We're coming to get fit. We want to change the world. And so we say, great. You can enter our beginning intro 101, let's get fit. And this is the 360 scan. And this is surprisingly hard because I think they're just going to check some boxes. But what we show is that I think everyone here at Imani knows that social change isn't just about starting some programs. It's really about changing your own perception of yourself and what you can change within yourself, but also what you can help change in others. We're in the education business after all. So the 360 scan is helping to give the team within the university an entirely new identity. all of a sudden a university says, I'm a professor, they totally change. Say, I'm not just a professor, I'm changing the university. And it's one by one, so it's an interview process, the mapping process, it's permission that we give through a structured process to say what's going on at the university and what can be done to make it better. And having students advising professors who's advising the president. So it's this intergenerational, interdisciplinary process. But because it's a hard process, similar to the gym, I don't know about you, but I've had some gym memberships where I've never really showed up. And then you get embarrassed, you don't want to show up because maybe the guy at the front desk will remember you and know that. And sometimes that happens with the 360 scan. I'd say our biggest drop off, this is our cheapest product. So we start with the lowest price. This is, right now in the US market, it's a $4,000 product. And that for universities at the right level is not too hard when they're trying to make this kind of strategic change. But we find that it sometimes is so hard for the university, they just never finish this 360 scan. And if they don't finish this, and we know, then they're really not, the timing's not right, or we don't have the right team, and they're really not worth working with. So that saves us tons of time. I can tell you my first 2 years of Ashoka U, I was just constantly on the phone with universities, just talking nonstop. Talking to any university that would talk to me. I know that we've all been there, right? And so setting basically a parameter and saying, this is the work that you have to do, prove that you're ready for this process, really helped make our processes much more efficient, and the schools coming through much more ready for the next stages that are much more difficult. And so the next stage, I'll kind of breeze through these, but we have a site visit where we bring now a professor from another university that we're working with to come to the university. And once again, we set the standards really high. A trick that we used, universities really like ceremony. So that was another thing that we realized. And so we would get the site visit agenda from the last university visit, and we'd send it to the next university, and they want to outdo the last university. So these site visits have become more and more and more extreme. So I'm going on one next week, and I think I have about 20 meetings over 2 days. I'm going to be meeting with hundreds of people at a plenary session, different sessions with the president. So they've gotten very intense, but it's a great way for the university to show off themselves. It's a milestone, a deadline where they have to actually have some of their work together to be able to show that they're up to the standard. And then if they're up to the standard and they want to continue on, and each stage has its own value, inherent value. So this is great value for the university to actually plan and come together to show itself off at the site visit. But we also then create a report of all the observations that we have at the university, what is very strong, what could be improved. And we send that directly to the president of the university, who is required to send a response before going to the final stage, which is a selection panel with, not with the Ashoka people, because at this point, we've been partners and colleagues with these universities for sometimes up to 2 years. So we want to bring in an external board of reviewers to bring validity and relevance to the process. So that's a board of external reviewers then that review the university based on our criteria. So just a little view of where we're at. I would say that Ashoka is a global organization, as I mentioned. We're in 70 countries around the world, but our team with Ashoka U that we started, we were all American, and so we felt much more comfortable starting in the US higher education system because it was a market that we knew. And so I would say the first 6 of 8 years of Ashoka U, we were just in the US because it took us about that long to get the model stable. And then just recently, now we've been partnering with our Ashoka colleagues around the world to share this opportunity with other universities. So now we have 3 Changemaker campuses in Mexico, 2 in Canada, 1 in Ireland, and 2 in the UK. But we've also now done workshops in South Africa, in South Korea, in Greece, and in Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan is very cool. Wild. Entrepreneurial opportunities everywhere. So this is, yeah, so but our theory of change with this is that we specifically wanted to have a representative sample of different types of universities and that were serving different types of student populations. So when we started in the US, it was Stanford, Duke, Harvard, MIT, and NYU. You might all be familiar with these names because they're very elite institutions that had social entrepreneurship. And even when we looked at the Ashoka Fellow, all the social entrepreneurs in the Ashoka Fellowship in the US, most were white men from the two coasts, from either California or from New York. Is that there's problems elsewhere in the US. It would be really great if we introduced this concept of social entrepreneurship at colleges and universities across the country that were serving different student populations. So the thing I'm most proud of right now is just 2 weeks ago, we elected a new our first Changemaker campus in the US. It's a community college. It's a technical college that serves 75,000 students. Miami-Dade College, many actually immigrants from Latin America, and they are going gangbusters. It's going to be, I think, our best Changemaker campus yet.
Oh, can I just
Yes.
Do you think is there any relation among religious affiliation, and do you think that maybe the institutions that are religious, they have more, is it harder to get inside them, and why, or there is no relation at all?
Excellent question. Actually, I think the Jesuit universities that we've been working with are very strong because I think values-wise, they're connecting it with the values of the Jesuit tradition, and so they're very strong partners. Interestingly, and this is another kind of representative, we wanted to have different religious affiliations, and I think in the US we just have fewer than you might have in Latin America, universities that have religious affiliations. But interestingly, University of San Diego, which is a Catholic university in San Diego, they did a survey of all the incoming students, and they have a Changemaker hub. All of their admissions now materials to students say, come to University of San Diego to be a Changemaker. They have billboards when you come onto campus, say, graduate from the University of San Diego to be a Changemaker. It's a huge part of their marketing. And when they did the survey to ask students why they came to University of San Diego, over 60% said because it was a Changemaker campus. And only 20% said because it was Catholic. So there's also, I think, a change in our generation about how many young people feel that strong affiliation to the religious institutions versus other ideas, maybe.
With the private and public thing, here in Brazil, some of the best schools are public, and they're really, the government has a lot of interest in it. They're owned by the government, of course. And there's a lot of politics involved, politics from outside the university. So you don't have to deal only with the university, but also with the politics around it. Have you ever had to deal with stuff like that? How do you deal with that?
So we've just started working with our colleagues in Latin America, and I think, or even in Greece, we were working with, it was a similar thing. It was a public university that had a lot of political, governmental involvement. And even in Chile right now, we're working with a couple of the universities there, the two, La Católica and Universidad de Chile, and UDD, which is Universidad de Desarrollo, which is one of the more private institutions. And what's interesting in these cases that we're having to be very strategic. So we're working with La Católica and UDD at the same time to see, can we get one of the government's kind of more strong private, or let's see, it's opposite. Did you say public are the strongest ones here? So the strong public institutions, can we use an incentive of having a more nimble institution to incentivize them to move faster? And then, so it's working in a local context to see what are the drivers that would incentivize people to go faster. And there is a university here in Brazil that I won't even mention yet. It's very early conversations, but as soon as we get to the next point, I will email this entire group. But we're finding a similar challenge here, that it's they're having to do a lot more conversations to introduce what these concepts are, to get students involved, to have the private sector involved, and influencers who the university admires, to try to get them to agree. And then once we get beyond the politics, the professors and students know how to do work. Yeah. And this is just to show the range of universities. And one of my favorite, the little 300 down here, College of the Atlantic, is a university in Maine in the US that has only 300 students. They all study human ecology. It's very involved. It was the first climate neutral university in the US, but they have such incredible models, and because they're so small, they can adapt and do lots of new things, and they tend to be like an incubator for the rest of the network. They're always sharing their new ideas because they can move a lot faster. Whereas also, Tec de Monterrey in Mexico, they're huge. But another large university we work with is Arizona State University. And what's fun working with an innovative university like ASU is that they're huge. They're also about 70,000 students. And they said, our problem is scale. So if we can do change making at scale, that's a model that they can export. So we're kind of using a range of sizes to get different models. And this is basically because the slide makes me happy. So as I mentioned, the key, the secret sauce to what makes a Changemaker campus successful are what we call change leaders. And so these are professors and administrators at colleges and universities who have become our main point people. And they're on my speed dial. We know their families, stay at their houses. But it's just really incredible that I feel like Ashoka U has scale because of the deep relationships that we've made with people. And so they're real people at real institutions who want to make real change. And so when I think of the Ashoka U team, we were just for many years 4 people in Washington, D.C., but we created this huge team who are basically co-workers and colleagues with us who are doing this work at universities. The Ashoka U Exchange. So as I mentioned, we did Ashoka U because we didn't know, we thought we would do more products eventually because we're entrepreneurial, and we did. So we realized that only working right now with, after 8 years, 33 Changemaker campuses, it doesn't really sound like that many. And so we thought, how do we get the ideas of Changemaker campuses, the best practices, the models, the curriculum? There's so many great things that these universities are creating. How do we spread them very quickly? And so one thing we launched was a conference. So we now host an annual conference where the Changemaker campus serves as a host every year. So they're very proud hosts. They actually even offer a sponsorship for the privilege to be the host and to have that positioning within the network. Last February, we had 300 universities from 70 countries, over 700 people. And we have an application process even to come to the conference to make sure that students, faculty, presidents, foundation leaders, social entrepreneurs, all mixed up. And the professors love it because most conferences professors go to, it's like, I'm an economics professor, I'll go to the economics conference and read my paper. But this conference isn't like that. They're there with artists and anthropologists and economists and policy people. So it's very interdisciplinary, it's very experiential. We like to think it embodies what we'd like to see at a Changemaker campus. And all the content, we don't create any of the content for the exchange. We completely open sourced it, so the conference is now every February. We open August 1st, the applications, so professors can submit their own ideas, and students as well, what they would like to present. And so the entire content, we then curate and match people together. So I'm like a massive matchmaker. So if you tell me anything about you, I'll probably match you with someone else. So we just match people together, and then they start building networks within networks, but it's really a way to make the network lead itself. And then another, this was just another business line for us to help us grow our business, but also to meet our systemic change goals of using our deep work with Changemaker Campus to have broad influence. So we have a number of knowledge products that we've done. So we have a curriculum guide that we've curated from the best of social entrepreneurship curriculum from across the network. We did a census study where we studied how social innovation has grown in higher education since we've started, partially as an impact report, but also in service of the field. And we're actually just launching, I think launching literally today, an online global, we're gonna call it the Ashoka U Commons. So usually at universities in the US, we have commons, which is a common space to come meet. And so we're gonna match university leaders together with coaches from our network around different topics. So how to launch a course, how to launch a certificate, how to raise funds for your center. So that even if the university isn't at Changemaker Campus standard yet, they can work with their peers to work on the individual components. So this, I think I wanted to just underline this point again, that to be change makers, we not only have to have the skills to do so, which I think universities are great at, and the knowledge, but also that we have to be capable of seeing ourselves and being change makers. And so I think what's been really unique about the Change Maker Campus process is this process of becoming. And as leaders within Ashoka U, within all the leaders that we work with, and now even the change leaders who I showed you the photo of, are creating a leadership network to actually put a vision forward for what they would like the future of the Change Maker Campus Network to be. And just kind of letting go and letting Ashoka U just kind of become bigger than ourselves, which is a really amazing place to be right now. And then I just wanted to show some examples, because it's really easy to talk about the theory and the process, but what does it look like? So here's a few photos. So as I spoke earlier about Arizona State University, and Arizona State University has 4 physical campus locations. You might have similar university structures here in Brazil, where you're not all in one campus together, living together, which is a lot of US colleges. So they said, well, there's nowhere for students to go to learn about this stuff. And they're all separate in different campuses. So that was their design challenge. So as part of our partnership, they said, great, we're gonna create Changemaker Central. And the next photo I had from our entrepreneurial leader there, she had a hard hat on and a sledgehammer, and she was knocking down the wall of our student union to create this co-working space. They created this awesome co-working space on 4 different campuses called Changemaker Central. And it's the hub for all the students. So they come and get recruited for projects, they work on ideas together. It's all student-led. So it's led by student change agents that lead a network across all of the centers. And they're always coming up with new ideas. So Devils in Disguise, their largest student-run day of service. A challenge, that's a business plan competition for social ventures. This I loved, 10,000 Solutions. They opened up a whole online platform and said, Arizona State University is not going to be about disciplines anymore. We're going to exist to solve problems. And so the university has actually defined global challenges that the university is putting all of its resources towards. Students, money, research. And so then they opened up a platform to all students and said, contribute your ideas to the problems that the university is trying to solve. So really getting that in the habit of practicing change making and contributing. So here's Changemaker Central. Here they are. Here they are. Oh, this is very exciting. This is a train in Phoenix, Arizona that says, at ASU, we built a Changemaker campus. Did I ever think a brand I created would be on the side of a train? Never. Yeah, so that just really very, I'm gonna be there next week. Can't wait, all right. And then Tulane University. So just this weekend, you saw in the news, we're celebrating the 10 years since Hurricane Katrina, which was a huge natural disaster in the US, and one of the largest that we've had in recent time. And Tulane University is right in the middle of New Orleans. And so the president at the time said the fate of the university and the city were one and the same. And even if you go to the next, this is the city underwater, and here's Tulane. So this was so extreme. And Tulane before this was known as a party university. So New Orleans, if you know Mardi Gras, it was a place, it was a private university that many wealthy students came from outside of New Orleans to come and party. And so what happened after this, they literally had to either shut down or they had to rebuild the university and the city together at the same time. He said, so that's what we'll do. And after that, every single, and this is right when they formed the partnership with Ashoka. We were really fortunate to be part of this kind of historical moment of reinvention. And he said, every single incoming student, so he wrote a letter to the incoming class, that we're a Changemaker campus, this is what our values are, and if you're coming to Tulane, every single incoming student has to volunteer in New Orleans. It is a requirement. It's the first of you, right? Look at this smile. And so, yeah, so this is what Tulane created. So explore, engage, empower They have now endowed chairs in social entrepreneurship and civic engagement. So in every single discipline, they endowed a chair. At the time, they created a assistant to the president for social entrepreneurship. They have 5 rotating professorships, urban innovation fellow program. What I love is that so lots of social entrepreneurs like flooded, bad use of terms, but they all came to New Orleans to help rebuild New Orleans. And so the university said, you know what, we can provide office space. We have space, it's an asset we have. And then the students would get involved if there's no boundaries between the university and the city. So all the social entrepreneurs got office space at Tulane. The students worked with them in the community, in the university, learning, growing, doing research. Yeah, and all kinds of partnerships. And they will be hosting, so next February, if you would like to come see Tulane, which is an amazing changemaker campus, February 25th to 27th will be the 2016 Ashoka U Exchange. The conference I mentioned earlier, they'll be the host next year. So I invite you all to come join us. Great. So Duke University. Duke was unique because Duke already had the Center for the Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship. Greg Dees, who was a dear mentor of mine, had been at Stanford. He recently died this last year, but he was like the Johnny Appleseed of social entrepreneurship and higher education. He was the first professor to teach the topic. He taught at Harvard, then at Stanford, and then Stanford wouldn't give him tenure. They didn't actually value his work in social entrepreneurship because it was too practical. So they sent him to Duke. But the center, it was kind of off to the side. So he used the same kind of model again. He was a professor who loved what he did and created a very deep research-based center. And so when we started working with Duke, it wasn't a challenge of introducing the topic, but it was about making it more across campus and more available to more students. And so Duke launched a center, a whole accelerator open to the entire university, and they specialized on global health. So they said, you know what, we're going to pick a challenge that Duke can actually measure our impact on how we're advancing progress towards global health, which I think is a really neat model.
When it says there with proving innovations in global healthcare, it's like these entrepreneurs bring in innovations that are occurring somewhere else where they were tested and so on and they want to learn, or they create, they test it, and then they get the
both. Yeah, so Duke especially has a specialization in scaling. They've done a ton of research on how to scale proven ideas. So they made the accelerator to where you can either help scale a proven idea or come in with your own idea. Does that answer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, there's Greg. Really beautiful. But this is, I love this. This has come up as a saying at Duke that instead of asking, what is my major? Asking, what is my problem? Which I think is a really nice culture change. And so it's, why are you, because I think we think a lot in Amani about the why. Why am I going to school? To study economics. It's not very inspiring. So I'm going to study economics to change the way our city deals with infrastructure issues for the poor. That would be a pretty good reason to study. Yeah, so that's what Duke's trying to do. So this is one at the University of Northampton and they're in the UK. And Northampton is known as a more vocational school in the UK. They have, everyone there is trying to get jobs, working in the service industry. But they said, we are going to be a social enterprise. They took that very literally. And so they actually created social enterprises within the university where students are working at the social enterprises. And in that experience, they're getting a certificate. So they created a whole certificate program that shows the levels of advancement of working towards solving social problems. So finding a solution, successfully implementing a solution, they'll get a gold certificate that they can take as part of their employment credits. And then Brown University, so this is, once again, trying to get a few fancy universities and a few less known universities to help have influencers who are changing what's getting done. And Brown, I don't know what kind of water they're drinking there, but all of the students there are so incredible. And they're really, they're really deeply involved in the community. And they have the Social Innovation Fellowship that they get academic credit for throughout the year. They work throughout the summer, and they have they're actually it's a self-designed major at Brown, so you don't have to pick a major. Everyone creates their own academic path, and so that led a lot of flexibility. It's amazing, and so they're actually picking their classes based on how it's helping them advance their deep thinking around the problem they're solving. Every kid should be a team maker. Yeah, this is incredible. And then if you go to the next slide, one of my favorite new programs that they just launched. So Brown is, it's traditional elite Ivy League university, so it's up on a hill. So here's Providence, and like Brown is up here. And they said, this isn't really what we're going for. So they opened the Tri-Lab, which is teaching, research, and impact in Providence. So down here, off the hill. And the students students apply, professors apply, community members apply, and local organizations apply, all to be in the lab together. So the professors aren't teaching, the students aren't just the students, the communities members aren't coming in just to give a talk. They're actually all in the lab together. And so it's a 1 to 2 semester seminar where they explore a framework of an issue. And then, so they teach each other about the issue. So the first issue they did was early childhood education. And so they said, okay, what's happening here in early childhood development in Providence? What are the problems? What are the organizations already working on this? Why is it not advancing? What are the main metrics? And then together as a group, they research it deeper, and then they propose a solution in combination with the community. And all of this is academic credit, and it's all part of the core university curriculum. This is, we're also just very fortunate that President Mashoga happens to be on the Brown University board. So that a new president just came to Brown, and that's when we started working with him as a change maker campus. So she wrote this into the strategic plan as a firm part of the university. So it's really writing it into the DNA. And I think last weekend with Roshan, your course was on storytelling.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this entrepreneurship stuff is hard. Because at universities, the problem that we see is that the business school people, entrepreneurs, don't like the word social. They're like, all entrepreneurship is social. What is this like social marketing, like social media, Twitter? Like, what are you talking about? And the liberal arts people, so all the activists, and they don't like the word entrepreneurship. Yeah, so when we're asking the university to work together, sometimes we have problems. And so, but a story, a well-told story, can say what this is about. Everyone can get on board with the young people who are doing this work if the stories are told well. So I recommend everyone checks out this platform. It's so cool. So Swear is the Brown University Public Service Center. They have their social innovation initiative, and a brilliant entrepreneur within that just launched Swear Sparks as an online platform for social change. And so they have storytellers that they've selected and trained as students who are going around and taking stories of all of the student social entrepreneurs. And so there's video essays, and it's all tagged. So it would be tagged by class. So you can check, oh, I want to take this class, what have the students been up to? It's by project, by theme, by student. So they're also building a community on this platform. It's just one of the best storytelling platforms I've seen. It's excellent. Excellent.
Yes. Yes. I just want to share that I am a Brown alumni, and that it's not about the Swear Center only, but it's in the whole university. And at the Watson Institute, that is the International Relations Institute, they also support social innovation programs leaded by alumni, and every year I get an email like, do you have a project? Apply, we have a grant. And it doesn't matter if you were in 2011 class, 2007 class, they still come back to you. They are also a little bit like Stanford. Like, you are part of our community. It doesn't matter when you graduated, and you are always welcome to come back and learn more. And we are always interested in knowing what you're doing, and we want to support you in your career path, your journey. And I've been, I studied in 3 different institutes there, and all of them do that. But the Watson Institute is the one that I get most news about because they are the best for the forum with these ideas. But I never had a chance to study sobre, but I'm going to look more for it. And it's not just in undergrad school, but it's grad school as well, fellowships, everything. They have great programs, and they are really enthusiastic about receiving Latin Americans here.
Whoa. Everyone sign up. I would love to take you around as a spokesperson because this is exactly the point that Changemaker campuses, one of the requirements is that it can't just be one center or one discipline, but that to pass the criteria test, to pass the panel, they have to show that the entire university is embedding these ideas in different ways across the campus and also undergrad and grad. So this Brown is a really terrific example. And then you wonder about the students. I love the students. The students are the ones actually creating the ideas and doing the work. And what I love this model, it's a Brown University example, so following from that, but what I love is that it's 2 Changemaker campus students working together. So I think some of the impact we're starting to see with the network, I was just on the phone with a few students the other day and they said, you know, we went to Clinton Global Initiative University, which I'm friends with the guy who runs it. It's a great idea. Lots of students can go and share their ideas. It's like, but you can really see the difference of students between Changemaker campus and not. Which, I don't know, we still need to do a lot more metrics to actually see if this is true. Because at Changemaker campuses, they just have so much more space to learn and connect. And we're also doing a lot of work to connect them with each other. So here are 2 students from 2 different Changemaker campuses, one at Brown and one at University of Maryland. And they said, you know, at the dining halls, we're wasting all of this food at the student dining halls. They're serving the students and then all of the extra food is getting thrown away. And there's families in need that we could be feeding in Providence at Maryland. And so they started the Food Recovery Network. And what was brilliant about it is it wasn't just direct service in their own university dining halls, but they did a massive research study of all of the policies for food recovery. And there's all kinds of laws in the US that make it really hard to get food and give it to other people. But they overcame all of these, made a whole template and a whole kit. And now 23 campuses are involved in this food recovery network, actually recovering food from the dining halls and sharing it with their local community. So it's just like one very specific example of the type of student energy and activation we're seeing, not just at one campus, but at many. This will kind of blow through, but just to, so you saw all of the criteria that they have to have great people working on the project, they have to work across disciplines. This has to be embedded also at the strategic administrative level. There has to be resources involved. They have to have a strategic plan and show how are they uniquely contributing to the higher education sector. So these are the criteria. And you saw what the universities are doing with this, some really amazing programs. But I think what I'm most proud of when I think about systems change, I don't know. So I'm at a particular point with Ashoka U where I'm like, okay, if everything, like I'm always playing the worst case scenario game, right? Like any day, any of our social ventures could just die. It's like always a fear you have when you're running something that just like tomorrow something could happen. All of us could quit our jobs, the funding could dry up. Like what would be left if our social venture didn't exist anymore? And so what I'm really proud of is that Changemaker Central at Arizona State University, I'm pretty sure will exist. The culture at Brown isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And so I feel like we're starting to reach this point of systemic change of universities that will have these programs with or without Ashoka U. But my question now is, how do we get these ideas beyond just 33 universities that are still relatively elite? And so we're trying to codify some of the key ideals that we can spread through broader means so that these ideas get out further. So we have some learning outcomes around ways of knowing, ways of thinking, thinking in systems, thinking creatively, thinking with a focus on results, defining problems, designing solutions. And I'll share all these slides with you guys too, so I know it's a small print. Ways of interacting and ways of being. So having a, cultivating an awareness of personal passions and motivations innovation. So these are just ideals that we see embedded across programs, curriculum, opportunities for students that we want to see really everywhere. And then we've just been trying to track some of the offerings. So this is maybe my invitation to all of us to say, how can we partner with higher education? Because no matter what social idea that you're pushing forward, many more universities are getting in the game. So even though they're still behind the curve, I think where they could be, I think more universities are making these offerings. You can go to the next slide. And so mostly certificates, some minors and master's programs, and this is what actually we like to see. We tend to be less keen on majors, just because it seems a little strange to me to major in social innovation. Once again, it's kind of like, what's your problem? Like, it's more of a process and methodology way of thinking, away from thinking, and then go deep into the problem that you're trying to solve. So this is the approach that we recommend. And so just a few lessons learned. I'm starting to wrap up here. You've all been incredibly patient with my storytelling. I told you I was going to talk for a while. So just the right people, the right partners, the right value proposition, and the right alignment. We've had some funders over time, so about anywhere between 50 to 80% of our budget over time has been through fees. So university fees, ticket fees at our conference, our knowledge products, but we also have funders that we've brought in over time to support the growth of the work. And we've had to fire some funders who just weren't on the same bandwagon, who just wanted us to be running programs at universities. And just really, really being very diligent about who you partner with. Universities, some really well-intentioned professors at universities that really like to work with us, but they're not meeting the criteria. They don't have the resources. They don't have the vision quite yet. And so really picking the ones that are ready to run has been our approach. Oh, this is just because I like this, and also maybe the challenge that I'm at right now. So just thinking of the different levels of impact. So thinking of like our direct service was when we had our first 4 universities in the network. We met at a summer camp and sat around like a fire and just met all these people, understood what universities were all about. It was very directly consulting with universities very closely. And then we scaled that when we worked with more universities. We scaled a methodology that wasn't just where we had to work one-on-one, but we had a 360 scan. And now we're at this level of trying to change the pattern.
How long it took you from the first one to scale?
4 to 5 years.
4 to 5.
Yeah, just refining. And now we're like 8 years in, just starting to get to a systems change or pattern change that we're seeing. And I still have a lot of questions about how much of it is just a trend, a general trend, and how much did we actually create through a certain view. So that we need to do some more measurement and an impact assessment on. It's something I really want to push our team this year on doing.
Erin, is this like an evolution, or should we just focus on system change, for instance, or in the
Good question.
framework change?
I tend to think of it as an evolution, just because I think it's really hard to start with systems change. But one of my favorite mentors has a quote, and she says, you should at least always aim for systems change to start with. That should be where you start, because at least then you might do some good. But if you don't even aim for systems change, probably won't do very much of it at all. And that, you're like, how are we getting to actually impact a number of people in a deep way? With the amount, this is once again Andrew Erin with the question of Coursera that I started with, saying, how do we scale the solution to the size of the problem? So starting with that mindset, and even if you only work with one school at the end school, but there's some models and lessons that could be applicable at larger scale. And then the framework change is really fascinating. So this is, Ashoka is thinking a lot about this right now, and it's framework change. And what Ashoka means by this, they said, there was one point in history where not everyone was literate, right? It wasn't expected, it was just the elite who read. And then through an evolution of history, through new technologies and new opportunities, it was the expectation that we all had the opportunity to learn how to read became a universal human right. And so right now we're thinking about where the world is at and how could we actually change mindsets where it's a global expectation that we are all change makers. And so all contributing in our own way. It doesn't have to be leading an organization within our own organizations, within our own lives, but that skill set and that mindset for us to be able to protect our planet and to be living together for many more years, anyhow, this mindset change, how do we make this a cultural norm? The idea of change making. So this is, can universities help with that? Maybe. And this is just a quote from my dear friend Marie. So this is my student co-leader. We've worked together now for about 15 years, and we know everything about each other. I am married, but I do feel like she's my other spouse. So she's been writing an article every month. They're actually excellent articles. This is from her article called Decade of Impact, but you can look up Marina Kim, check out some of her articles, they're great. She was saying, when we launched Ashoka U, we wanted to see this concept take root at colleges and universities around the world. We knew that students demanded the skill sets of entrepreneurship, social impact, and meaning in their college experience. Since we had only experienced college time, we thought that we were signing up for a 2 to 3 year commitment. Boy, were we wrong. It turns out that when you get to the real world, there's a lot more complexity, more resistance to change, and more barriers to overcome. And then we remembered that a mentor of ours, Jed Emerson, said, your real measure of success is if the changes you're trying to make now are completely mainstream within a decade or two. And I'm a very impatient person. This has been very hard for me, but this is something that I'm trying to cope with, but also giving myself permission and allowance to see things in a bigger concept and scope of time, while also having a sense of urgency. Like I said, I really feel like we need to get our measurement down. I think to get to this bigger mindset change, I want to start working in policy and also with maybe rankings, that this is just an expectation of universities at a much bigger scale. So it's going to take some time, but I can't achieve, and I think it's doing a lot of good. So why do I do what I do? This is the ending. I'm just going to tell a quick little story. You might say, fish? I thought we were talking about universities. This is very strange. But I was having dinner with an Ashoka fellow who is actually a lawyer. She's based in California. And we were eating sushi, so we were talking about fish. But she said, I'm so glad you're working in higher education, Erin. It's so expensive. It really has to change. She was like, I did my law degree at Berkeley. And she was like, and it's just ridiculous. I have so many loans to pay back. All of us have felt that weight of the loans. And she said, so, most lawyers, what do? They go and work in corporate law to pay back their loans, and then go maybe do something else later, or maybe you just stay in corporate law. And she said, but I did the math. So I did the math and saw that if I paid my loans back as slowly as possible, basically as slowly as possible so that I could still have a nonprofit job where I'm not making as much money. So this is like basically the maximum I could pay, paying it off as slowly as possible. I would pay it off in the year 2048. And then I realized that this was the year that the oceans might be extinct of wild fish. And she said, I could spend my life being a corporate lawyer, or I could pay my loans back very slowly and make change and try to save the fish. She was like, you know what? I'm with the fish. I'm too. I'm with the fish. Yeah, I'm with the fish. So this is the final slide. So this is what I've learned so far to figure out. I think it's important, like that fish quote, that's powerful, right? So how can we show the world that the world's changing, that we are damaging our world, we do need to be change makers, it's worthwhile. And then it's changing the story about who's solving problems. Right now, it's probably the dominant mainstream story that it's governments, it's the UN, it's whoever is solving problems. But actually, young people are solving problems. I'm solving problems. You're solving problems. It's a different story. What are the skills that we need? So we're all here. Like actually, I've been geeking out so hardcore all week preparing for the weekend class. So thank you for having me back. I will not talk at all. You're all going to be doing the work this weekend, but I've done a lot of research to prepare for the weekend. And I feel like I'm learning so much. Like I feel like I just need more skills to be better equipped to do the work that I'm doing. So all of us just need to keep working. And then just celebrate change making as something we want to do. Thank you.